Hello, my friend. Welcome back to Mulenge Speaks series. This is John Kapapi here, your host. Today we are tackling part 18, clip 18 of Mulenge Speaks. As you already know, I believe you are used now to these videos, and the main topic is, of course, Mulenge. The name that is now famous around the world, but it has history. This name Mulenge has history, and that's what we are doing. We are trying to defend it, protect it, because the population, the Bafulero people, the Bafulero tribe in Eastern Congo, DRC, want to tell you, and they have been telling you about Mulenge, how it came to be, and how the Banyarwanda population from Rwanda, from the Kingdom of Rwanda, they want to use it for their own interest, for their hegemonic project, for their colonization in Eastern Congo or in Central Africa. And so today we are continuing in the same line of defense that Mulenge will continue to speak. If in the previous time, a decade or maybe 20 years ago, the population of Mulenge could not speak, but enough is enough, and we're gonna continue to speak, to defend the concept of Mulenge, to defend the population of Mulenge, and to defend the Congo and Congolese people against any colonization. And so today, as I've been saying, today we are going back to our question about the question that was raised by a graduate from the University of St. Paul in Canada, Ottawa. And this student, Cybele, wrote a master's degree in conflict resolutions. As we already know, so many people are writing about the Banyarwanda, especially the Tutsi class, about how they have been attacked or killed, which in one way or another may be true, but we are not in that subject. We are in the subject of customary laws, customary rights, as it is known in Africa. And so Cybele wrote did his master's on resolution of conflict, and he chose to discuss or to choose the subject of his paper on the Banyarwanda. And so and specifically he wrote about how the colonial power, the Belgian colonial authorities distributed lands to the Banyarwanda that are presently living in South Kivu, and who are around the world now claiming that they are Congolese of origin, that they are Banyamulenge, which it is not true. So we don't have Banyamulenge in Congo, we have Banyarwanda in Congo. So if a Tutsi person, if a Hutu person comes and tell you that she or he is a person of Mulenge, tell him, stop right there, you are lying. And that's what we have been proving, that's what we have been showing you. And so Cybele, when he wrote that the Belgium distributed land to the to Banyarwanda in Eastern Congo, we say that we're going to prove that it is not true by giving you two reasons. The first one, he said that the Banyarwanda were not called foreign native because they lived into the Congo Free State. And we showed you in the clip number 17 that the Congo Free State was an individual property. It was a property that belonged to one person, King Leopold II of the Kingdom of Belgium. Meanwhile, the Banyarwanda were subject of the German authorities and the kings of Rwanda. because during the time of the Congo Free State, 1885 to 1908, the Kingdom of Rwanda was already a colony of the Belgian, of the German. That means the population in that kingdom were subject of the German. So it was impossible for the Belgium to distribute land to the Banyarwanda who were living in Congo Free State, which are, by the way, according to the royal decree of 1891, they were native of foreign or neighboring colony. So they were well identified at that moment that they were foreign native. And also we also say that there is another reason that we will give you that shows that the Banyarwanda, even if they were living in the Congo Free State, they were not Congolese of origin, they were not Congolese, and their country, their kingdom was not part of the Belgium, were not part of the colony that the Belgium controlled, which Cybele described in his book, that in fact the Kingdom of Rwanda was part of the colony, was the Belgium colony. And so now we say that we're going to give you a second explanation or proof that what Cybele wrote or what he was fed, because we know that that's how the Banyarwanda of the Tutsi class are doing, are feeding people around the world that this is who they are when they are not. And so we believe also that's how Cybele got caught in that web of lies, as so many people, Congolese, European, Americans, there are many of them, they have been caught or deceived by the population that we call here, we identify here as Banyarwanda. And so we have established the step that led to the union between the Belgium Congo and the territory of Rwanda or Burundi in 1925, 1926. In other words, we are trying now to give the second reason that shows that the Kingdom of Rwanda or Burundi were not part of the Belgium colony, because that's what Cybele said, that because if the Belgium distributed land to the Banyarwanda because they were part of the colony. And so we show if the union, which took place in 1925, 1926, made the Kingdom of Rwanda and Burundi a part of the Belgium colony at the same level with the Belgium Congo. That's what we're going to show here by providing some documentation from the United Nations. So there is no doubt that you have been also doing your own research about this issue, because the documents that are present, the archive that we obtained from our research are in English. And that's why I encourage Congolese children, Congolese population to learn, to have that courage to learn English, because many documentation about the history of Congo and the African Central Africa, they are in English. And so we have to make an effort slowly and learn English, because those documentation, they are not translated in French and they are in English. And so we'll try here to explain as we can. Whether the Banyarwanda lived in the Congo Free State or in the Belgium Congo, the fact remained that they were foreign native from neighboring colony, because the Germans were already in the Kingdom of Rwanda from 1886 to 1919 on one hand, and they were subject of the kings of Rwanda and Burundi. If what they claim that they came from Rwanda and Burundi and Tanzania, but only to take these two kingdoms of Burundi and Tanzania, we know that any person, any individual who crossed into the Congo Free State as a subject of the king was a subject of the king, was not a Congolese. Now, the question that we are trying to answer here, as I said, is to establish if by the fact of the union that the Belgian authority made between the Belgium Congo and the territory of the Rwanda Urundi after the mandate of the 1919 and 1921, if because of that union the Kingdom of Rwanda became part of the colony, the Belgium colony. The territory of Rwanda and Urundi became part of the Belgium colony by the fact of this union, as Seibel claimed in his master's degree or his master's papers. He did not. There is another, and that answer we found it in a document that was produced by the mandate system, by a body that is called Permanent Mandate Commission. I repeat again, there's a document that produced or explained the mandate. Here we are talking about Mandate B. Mandate B concerned the territory of Burundi and Rwanda because they were not able to independently or politically organize or govern themselves. So they gave them to a certain power, colonial power, to administer them so that they can be prepared to their own self-government. And so we can assume that this commission was not silent, or maybe it had been silent because no one asked it to speak. But we know that he had been speaking since 1937 or 32. And we're gonna see how and what he did say. As we have said, Belgium received a mandate from the League of Nations to administer the native of Rwanda Urundi because they were incapable people to govern themselves. And so, according to international law, the native or a protectorate did not become nationals of a protective power. I'm going to repeat again. According to international law, the native of a protectorate did not become nationals of the protective power. And I will use the book of James Hales, who wrote some legal aspect of the mandate system: sovereignty, nationality, termination, and transfer, published in London in 1937. This book gave us all the information, all the answer we need to know about the union between the Belgium Congo and the territory of Rwanda Urundi on one hand, and the population or inhabitant of the territory of Rwanda Urundi on the other hand. So legally speaking, the Permanent Mandate Commission met in New York on October 1921 to discuss the question of inhabitant of Mandate B. In 1921, this Permanent Mandate Commission met in New York on October 1921 to discuss the question of the inhabitant of Mandate B. This was the question. I quote, "Was it desirable that the inhabitant placed under the administration of a mandatory power should be granted the nationality of that power? Or should they be deemed to keep their former nationality, or should some other system be adopted to provide them with a status?" I'll repeat that quotation again. "Was it desirable that the inhabitant placed under the administration of a mandatory power should be granted the nationality of that power, or should they be deemed to keep their former nationality, or should some other system be adopted to provide them with a status?" On that question that was asked regarding the population or inhabitant of that territory that was taken from the German after they lose the First World War, Then there was a subcommittee that was also created in May 1922. The Permanent Commission mandate met in October 1921. Now we have a subcommittee that is also meeting next year, the following year in May 1922, to discuss the same question, and here is the conclusion that they came out. I quote, "It was not proper to assimilate the inhabitant of the territory to the national of the mandatory or to the inhabitant of their own colony, but that in general it would be better to give them a special status conformable to the requirement of the new principle of the mandate." Here's the conclusion that the subcommittee on the same issue came up on May 1922. They said, I quote, "It was not proper to assimilate the inhabitant of the territory," which territory? The territorial mandate B, which is the Burundi here and Rwanda. "It was not proper to assimilate the inhabitant of the territory to the nationals of the mandatory." Donc, it was not proper to assimilate the Banyarwanda and the Barundi to the nationals of the Belgium Congo. But in general, it would be better to give them a special status conformable to the requirement of the new principle of the mandate. It wasn't enough with those two meetings. On April 23rd, 1923, the Permanent Mandate Commission met again and adopted, among other propositions, 4 propositions that I'm going to read to you here. They met in 1921. They met in 1922. Now they met again on April 23rd, 1923. And here are the 4 propositions that they came up. The first one reads, I quote, "The status of the native inhabitant of a mandate territory is distinct from that of the nationals of the mandatory power and cannot be identified therewith by any process having general application." Resolution number 2. The native inhabitant of the mandate territory are not vested with the nationality of the mandatory power by reason of the protective extended to them. Proposition number 3. It is not inconsistent with 1 and 2 above that individual inhabitant of the mandated territory should voluntarily obtain naturalization from the mandatory power in accordance with arrangement which it is open to such power to make with this object under its own law. And proposition number 4, I quote, "It is desirable that native inhabitants who receive the protection of a mandatory power should in each case be designated by some form of descriptive title which will specify their status under the mandate." If you read these 4 propositions, you will see clearly that they refused to assimilate the Banyarwanda to the Congolese, who were not Congolese per se, because at that time it was still a Belgium Congo. All these different tribals or kingdoms in the Belgium Congo were different tribes, different kingdoms. They only became one nation at the independence in 1960. And so they refused to assimilate the Banyarwanda to the population that formed the Belgium Congo. That was not enough. In 1927, the Belgian government adopted the description national or ressortissant of Rwanda-Urundi. It was adopted in 1927. the Belgium government adopted the description national of Rwanda-Urundi, which is translated in French, les ressortissants du Rwanda-Urundi. So what was the conclusion on the naturalization of these ressortissants of Rwanda-Urundi? Van Ries, who oversaw the question on behalf of the mandate B and C, wrote, "The mandate territory do not constitute an integral part of the territory of any state. So state their inhabitants were deprived of the privilege of naturalization and were thus placed at a disadvantage as compared with national of the colony, properly so called." If, according to Van Ries, the mandate territory did not constitute an integral part of the colony, no wonder the Banyarwanda were already identified as foreign native in both the Congo Free State, as according to the Royal Decree of 1891 and according to the Decree of 1910 in Belgium, Congo. Combining these two realities and considering the 4 resolutions adopted by the Permanent Mandate Commission, the Belgian government was politically limited because on July 14th, 1952, the Belgium was not sovereign in all government services. Now we have in 1925-26, the government of Belgium now is given the authority to administer the territory of Rwanda-Urundi, and at the same time they unite the Belgium Congo to the territory of Rwanda-Urundi to administer them. They did not unite them politically, they did unite them administratively, because we'll see the reason. And here in 1952, what they did, the Belgium was not sovereign in all the government services because the UN was also responsible for some services. So they gave the government of Belgium to administer the population of Burundi and Rwanda in some area, and then the UN also took control of other services. And what were those services? So the government of Belgium were given the finances, the foreign affairs, the defense, and the national security. That's what was given to the Belgium. And what did the UN took? The UN was reserved 3 branches: political branches, economic branches, and social growth of the population or indigenous of Rwanda-Urundi. So we can see how the UN or the Permanent Commission, the Mandate Commission, how they try to avoid or keep the colonial power from taking over the territory that were left by the defeated German and the Ottoman Empire. So the UN took control of the political branch, economic branch, and social growth branch, and they gave the Belgium the foreign affairs, the defense, the finances, and national security. That's why it is not familiar with the role of a colonial power for 2 reasons. Article 1 of the Mandate Accord, l'Accord de Tutelle, for the French, if you remember very well, there's what was called l'Accord de Tutelle à l'article 1er, or Article 1 of that Accord de Tutelle, or Article 1 of the Mandate Accord. It reads, I quote, the Belgium administers the territory of Rwanda as part of its own Belgium territory, but in reality, Rwanda and Burundi does not have that quality. The indigenous of Belgium Congo are Belgians, and the indigenous of Rwanda Urundi are without determined nationality, are national of Rwanda Urundi. I'm going to read that Article 1 of the Mandate Accord. This Article 1 read, The Belgium administers the territory of Rwanda-Urundi as part of its own Belgium territory, but in reality, Rwanda-Urundi does not have that quality. The indigenous of Belgium Congo are Belgians, and indigenous of Rwanda-Urundi without determined nationality are national of Rwanda-Urundi. The second reason, point 9 of Article 22 of the Versailles Treaty, point 9 of Article 22 of the Versailles Treaty states that, I quote, "A permanent commission shall be constituted to receive and examine the annual report of the mandatories and to advise the Council on all matters relating to the observance of the mandate." I'm going to read that point 9 again of Article 22 of the Versailles Treaties. It reads, I quote, "A permanent commission shall be constituted to receive and examine the annual reports of the mandatories and to advise the Council on all matters relating to the observance of the mandate." The interpretation of this point 9, was broadly defined by Hales himself as follows, I quote, "The Council denied that sovereignty in the traditional sense lies in a mandatory, and the statutes states that the mandate, as document in opposition to title mandate as territory, were to be exercised by the mandatory on behalf of the League in accordance with certain provisions." So my friend, we have two provisions here that are clearly define how the Belgium was going to administer the territory of Rwanda-Urundi, even though they did that union, but they were given some restrictions, some principle to follow. And we see how Health is trying to define them, is trying to explain, is trying to give it some clarity here on what was going on, what role they were giving the Belgian when administering this territory of Rwanda-Urundi, and how they were to treat the population or the indigenous of Rwanda-Urundi. And they gave them some powers, but they limited them on other areas. And so they tell them that they have to give a report, as we see here in this point 9 of Article 22 of the Versailles Treaty, that they have to give report every year. They have to give a report to the United Nations how they are administering this territory, which they were not giving, they were not doing when they were taking care or when they were in control of the Belgian Congo as a colony. So we can even stop from here by only this article and those this point that we are mentioning, the four propositions and those meetings that were held in 1921, 1922, and 1923. We can see clearly that the territory of Rwanda-Urundi was not a colony. And if it was not a colony, then its population were not Congolese. I want you to understand me very well. I'm not talking about after 1960. We are only talking about before 1960, because if the history of this continent, the African continent, or the Congolese people, or the Banyarwanda people, or Barundi people, or any people, if the history is not well taught, then everything is a mess. Because if we don't teach our children what the traditions say, what the history say, then they won't understand the future. And the Banyarwanda are doing all they can to distort that future, to distort first the history where they come from, so that they can enter into the future with a wrong history that they are teaching to their own children first and to the children of the world. And that Mulenge cannot just sit down and be silenced. That's why we are speaking out. And so here, in other words, the territory of Rwanda-Urundi was not a Belgian colony as Cybele suggested, and as Banyarwanda are suggesting to their audience on one hand, and the fact that the Kingdom of Belgium was giving an annual report to the Permanent Mandate Commission about political progress of the ressortissants of Rwanda-Urundi on the other hand. So in conclusion, if the Rwanda-Urundi was not a Belgian colony, and the Banyarwanda were not Congolese of origin, from the beginning to the time of the Constitution of Lualaba in 1964, what else can we say? What else can we say if, based on this information I just gave you, that are coming from the Permanent Commission of Mandate? If this commission have never existed, we have considered that because the Belgium had united the Belgium Congo to the territory of Rwanda-Urundi, we have said that in fact the population now that are fusion now to become all Congolese, Banyarwanda and Congolese of indigenous Congolese, they are all one. But that's not the case here. And you can see that from the beginning, they are not talking about Tutsi here. They are not talking about Hutu. Because Tutsi is a class, it is not a tribe. Hutu is a class, it is not a tribe. So when the Banyarwanda are coming in this country or any other place in Congo, in Tanzania, in Europe or in Australia, claiming that they are Tutsi Congolese, we don't have Tutsi Congolese in Congo. We have Banyarwanda. Because naturalization is made based on your previous or your former nationality. If I come here, I want to become an American, I will come first, they will ask me my nationality. My nationality will be Congolese. Then I'll take now, I'll wear the second nationality, which will be the American nationality. But they won't ask me if I'm Fuliru, or if I'm Bembe, or Rega, or Vira. And so, any person who claims to be from Rwanda is called Munyarwanda. If you are from Uganda, you are called a Ugandan. If you are from Burundi, you are a Burundian. So they don't consider your clan. And Tutsi here is not a clan. It is not a tribe, it is not a clan. It is a social class. So, my friend, I wanted to bring this up so that you can see and you can read by yourself. Try to read and rewind this video to read those provisions from the League of Nations, from the Commission, from the Permanent Commission or Mandate Commission, from the subcommittee, what they decided and what did they say. They clearly stated that the population of the territory or the mandatory cannot be assimilated, cannot be given the same title as the national of the mandatory powers. It is clearly stated here. The document exists. They're still in a library. They are in the library. They are at the United Nations. The documents are there. So if Rwanda and Burundi was not a Belgian colony and the Banyarwanda were not Congolese origin, why are they claiming these two rights today when they were given the Congolese nationality after 1964 based on the constitution of the country? Unless there are other motives that are behind their claim, we can see clearly that the Banyarwanda, whether in Congo Free State or in the Belgium Congo or after their independence in 1962, they have never been Congolese of origin, and they were not Congolese at all, because we see in the clip 19 from the Congolese Round Table, or in French, La Table Ronde Congolaise. There's an article that speaks about Banyarwanda. We'll look at it, we'll see what was their political or legal right. Were they authorized to elect were they authorized to be elected? If they were elected, or if they were authorized to elect, what quality, political quality did they have at that time before 1961? If the Congo became an independent state on June 30th, 1960, were the Banyarwanda living in Congo at that particular time already Congolese? From this information I just gave here, the answer will be no. Because at this time they were not yet independent in their own kingdom, and they are not Congolese of origin, and they are not part of the colony, but they are member or national of Rwanda Urundi, or they are ressortissants de Rwanda Urundi. So they are not Congolese before 1960. That's not the big question. The big question that we are trying to show here is not to deny them their nationality. They can be anything they want to be. But our point here is that we are claiming what is our rights as indigenous Congolese, the Bafuliru and the Bavira, the Babembe and the Barega. We have tradition, and we are claiming those traditions because they were given by our forefathers, and it is our responsibility to keep them, to preserve them, and to protect them. So I invite you to read this video, listen to it again, read and reread these provisions, and see what the United Nations wrote about the Mandate B, and then judge by yourself. And then we'll try to explain later in clip number 19 about the elections, or to be elected, if the Banyarwanda were elected, if they did the election before 1960, what was their quality, their quality? Were they Congolese, or were they still the ressortissants of Rwanda, Burundi at that particular time? So again, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time. So don't forget to comment, read the description, and try to share so that our children, your children, can read the history. They have to know the history, otherwise they'll be dumped, they'll be duped, they'll be deceived, and what they'll be receiving is pure lies. And we don't want that to happen to American, to Canadian, to European, specifically to Congolese. Our children, they have to know the history, their history. Thank you. See you next time.